Gwen Moore, and I understand my colleague from Connecticut, Senator Murphy, will be here. He has been a real teammate on this issue. I go way back on gun violence. I advocated the measure in Connecticut banning assault weapons back in the early 1990s and then defended it in our state Supreme Court when it was challenged. I dealt day after day as our state attorney general with domestic violence and child abuse and neglect. The biggest department in my office as attorney general, the biggest number of lawyers were assigned not to antitrust or consumer protection or to the cases that made the headlines, but to domestic violence and abuse and neglect. Tens of lawyers doing these cases day after day, thousands of these cases year after year, attesting to the prevalence of this problem in our society. Domestic violence is a scourge, an epidemic that we need to conquer, and it is underreported. That is what is most striking about domestic violence. The shame, stigma, embarrassment of reporting domestic violence prevents many women, the victims are primarily women, from coming forward. And I want to thank the women who are here today for making this kind of public statement so that we can educate people about the horrific consequences. The other point that I think needs to be kept in mind is that guns increase the likelihood of homicides in domestic violence by 500%. It's not just a marginal difference. It is a major, game-changing difference that guns in the house make when there is domestic violence. Killings are simply much more likely to occur in domestic violence situations if guns are present. And that is why we need to fill or stop some of the loopholes that Mark referred to. One is, when there are temporary restraining orders, in almost all states, there is no current prohibition against possession of firearms. When there's a permanent restraining order, yes, judges routinely order that the man in the house, the intimate partner or spouse, be barred from possessing guns. But when a woman in that most vulnerable situation, when tempers and emotions run highest, when the likelihood of violence is greatest, a judge simply can't order that there be a ban on possession of firearms by a man who may kill his intimate partner. And so I've proposed a measure called the Domestic Violence Survivor Protection Act to protect women in that situation, to fill that loophole. Temporary restraining order obtained by a woman who is under immediate threat of physical violence by a man who has a gun. That man should be barred from having that gun. And I'm hopeful that we will see that measure passed by the Congress. I don't think there should be any controversy about dangerous people, men who are about to do harm or threaten to do harm to women, barred from having a gun. And we know that the numbers are staggering. You know, in 1 year in Connecticut, 56,000 victims of domestic violence. That's in Connecticut alone. And the number one killer in domestic violence situations is not a knife, not a baseball bat, it is a gun. The number one homicide means is a gun. Those men should not have them when they're under temporary restraining orders. And we ought to be uniting on this measure, on so many other measures that we propose. Background checks, ban on assault weapons, ban on high-capacity magazines, illegal trafficking, straw purchases, mental health initiative. They all deserve support. But let's talk about domestic violence and about preventing it by making temporary restraining orders truly effective against men who would do harm to women. Thank you.